Um, any of you ever order something on Amazon and it says it's going to arrive within a certain period of time and you're counting on it and it shows up late? Or that you get this notification, your package's arrival will be late. Any of you experienced that? It's happened to me numerous times. I'm never happy about it. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but I get a bit frustrated that this thing arriving that I need isn't here. And what I find to be interesting is that there are many times that this thing that I thought that I needed by this time that I wanted to have it wasn't something that I actually needed. It's just something that I wanted. And the delay in the arrival of it actually helped me realize what I really needed and what I really wanted. Anyone that makes sense to you at all? There's this delay, this late arrival of something that I think is going to be good, and yet it turns out to be less satisfying than maybe what I thought it was. And I'm going to be reading a story. We have a lot of verses to cover today, so we're going to jump in just a moment. About something where Jesus arrives late, but he arrives late intentionally. And it really challenges our ideas about what is late and what is on time. And it challenged us because the cost of what people had to endure was so great. And so we're going to be talking about a miracle that Jesus performs intentionally late. And I have to be honest, like as I was thinking about my own life, I was thinking about my son's birth. It came at an unexpected time in the middle of my Hebrew final. And when he was born, he had health issues. And I'd prayed so often that God would heal him. I prayed for a miracle. And it didn't happen in my timing. On the Sunday that my wife was going to go and spend Easter with my daughters, my son went from the pediatric ward to pediatric ICU. And things seemed to go backwards. And I had a lot of conversations with God, and it was in that place where my faith grew the most that sustained me in ways that I never thought possible. I heard in that time from God, he said, "Mark, I love your son more than you do. You're going to have to trust me with him." And it's a good thing that he taught me that then, because my son's life was filled with a bunch of medical issues the rest of his life. The delay in healing for what I wanted. The crazy thing is that some of the things that the doctors never thought was going to change, there were miraculous things that took place. This interstitial lung disease that the doctors thought he was going to have the rest of his life and be with a pulmonologist for the rest of his life. The doctor called it spontaneous change 2 years in. 2 years of dealing with this, it seemed like it was a long time in coming. But that was just only one of his health issues. The other ones didn't happen miraculously. It was medical intervention. Some of it was occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech pathology, numerous surgeries. And so I want to tell you, as we talk about this today, I don't want to put like this whitewash or gloss over the fact that many of you are hurting and you're wanting miracles in your lives. And it doesn't happen in the timing that we want. And while it's hard for us, I want you to know that God wants you to meet you in it, and that he actually can get the glory even in this broken world through whatever you're walking through. So that's my word of hope to you as we begin today. We're going to read a story. This is the story of Lazarus from John chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, you can turn there. We're going to be reading 44 verses. I'm not going to read it all at one time. I'm going to actually read through the narrative, provide a little bit of commentary, and then we're going to reflect on it together afterwards. So if you will, verse 1 of John chapter 11 says this: "A man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. Mary would later pour perfume on the Lord. She would also wipe Jesus' feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was sick in bed. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus. 'Lord,' they told him, 'the one you love is sick.' When Jesus heard this, he said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory. God's Son will receive glory because of it.' Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So after he heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. So a few commentary. Jesus' friend, somebody he loves, is Lazarus, is sick. He makes a declaration, it will not end in death. And Jesus frames the statement that not ending in death is going to be something that will bring God's glory. We see that Jesus reveals himself as God's Son, and that the Son will receive glory, and that will bring him glory, this not ending in death. And so I want you to just remember this idea of God's glory through this as we read. So then we see Jesus' feelings are revealed. It says that he loves Martha, he loves Mary, he loves Lazarus. And then we see that Jesus' choice doesn't seem to match the feelings that you would automatically assume, does it? Jesus delays. Jesus says, yeah, I love him, but I'm not going to show up for him. I don't know about you, but when I have something in my life or someone that I care about in my life, the speed with which I respond is often indicated by the amount of love or responsibility that I have with them. And for some reason, Jesus, his actions don't correspond there. The next part that we're going to read is kind of a contextual note in the reading of this. Jesus is having interaction with his disciples, and he's actually preparing his disciples. He's expressing concern, but he's helping them understand why he's going to say and do what he does. So he's kind of giving them the why. Verse 7 says this, and then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. By the way, notice he said Judea, not Bethany. He said Judea, and that's important. So this is a sign, Judea. Rabbi, they said, a short time ago, the Jews there tried to kill you with stones. Are you still going back? Then Thomas, who was called Didymus, spoke to the rest of the disciples. Let us go also, he said. Then we can die with Jesus. So just the gravity of the moment, Jesus is saying, I'm going to go back to a place where my life is in danger and their life is in danger. In the midst of him delaying to go to somebody that he loves who's dying, who his disciples had seen him heal many hurt and sick people. You guys all tracking with me? Does any of this make sense to you at this point? Good, me neither. All right, so Jesus prepares his disciples to deal with what's coming and the fears that they have associated with it. And this next part, there's 2 parts to this response that he gives his disciples, is very interesting, but it's important that we understand. Jesus answered, aren't there 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks during the day won't trip and fall. They can see because of this world's light. But when they walk at night, they'll trip and fall. They have no light. Okay, what? Right, for us, we're so distanced from this in the kind of speech and language. But this idea about 12 hours of daylight, this is a Hebrew idiom or way of saying, when it's light, you can see, and that period of time, the 12 hours that's light, is something that was determined by God. God separated the light from the dark. It means that there's this time, this figurative language for an appointed time by which you can see. And there's an appointed time at night where it's hard to see. So this language here is that he's basically saying there's an appointed time to be there. And so he's trying to help them understand. So, and the idea of light is walking in the light means you're walking in the appointed time. And if you were to walk in darkness, you'd be walking in the time that was not the time that God wants. So he's saying we're walking in the light means we're going to go to Judea, to Bethany, because that is the appointed, now it will be the appointed time. So part 2 of this, starting in verse 11, he says, after this, Jesus went on speaking to them. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, he said, but I'm going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he's sleeping, he'll get better. Jesus had been speaking about the death of Jesus, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So he just told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Why did he tell them he was sleeping? Except it's a foreshadow of something else, which I'll get to in a second. But for your benefit, I'm glad I was not there. Now you will believe. Let us go to him. So the idea of sleeping and waking him up is because he's forecasting, he's trying to give his disciples, and John is trying to give us as recipients of this letter this foreshadowing of the fact that this will not end in death, which is what Jesus had already said. So he's died, but this will not end in death. Seems like a contrary statement, except the ending is different than what the experience was. The death was the experience for Lazarus, but it wasn't the ending of the story, because something was coming. So Jesus is explaining God's timing, that he wants to accomplish his purposes. He explains Lazarus has died. They're going to go wake him up, and that's why they are going. And the result of this will cause his disciples to actually believe more than what they currently believe about who Jesus is, about his power that he has, and what he wants and intends to do. So Jesus arrives in Bethany, verses 17 through 27. When Jesus arrived, he found out that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. Many Jews had come to Martha and Mary. They'd come to comfort them because their brother was dead. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Mary, "I wish you'd been here. Then my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you everything you ask for." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again. This will happen when people are raised from the dead on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even if they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God. I believe that you are the one who's supposed to come into the world." So we see in Martha's confession a couple things. She believes that a resurrection life, she believes that that's a possible thing, but it's going to come at the end. And she comes to believe and profess. She also believes that Jesus is the Messiah, but doesn't know the fullness of what that means. She comes to believe the fullness of this through this story. He says, "I am the resurrection and the life." God's glory is tied to our faith in believing in Jesus and who he says and what he's going to do and what he's done. Resurrection is not just an event that will occur. It's not just a concept. Resurrection and life are found in the person of Jesus, not just what Jesus does. And Martha is talking to life and to resurrection, and the one who offers life and resurrection to people. It was standing in the person in front of her. And so this is Jesus telling Martha and telling us, you don't need me. You didn't need me to arrive earlier. You just need me. You don't need me. You didn't need me to arrive early. You just need me. Jesus wants Martha to believe something that's true about the nature of his relationship with people, that when you're in a relationship with him, he can bring life out of what seems like death. You don't have to wait because life is right in front of you. Mary expresses similar feelings and understanding as Martha, just with a bit more emotion in verse 28 through 34. After this, she said, Martha went back home. She called her sister Mary to the side to talk to her. The teacher is here, Martha said. He's asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Jesus had not yet entered the village. He was at the place where Martha had met him. Some of the Jews who'd been comforting Mary in the house, they noticed how quickly she went up and out, and they followed her. They thought she was going to the tomb to mourn there. Mary reached the place where Jesus was. When she saw him, she fell at his feet. She said, "Lord, I wish you'd been here. Then my brother would not have died." Jesus saw her crying. He saw that the Jews who'd come along with her were crying also. His spirit became very sad and troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. So Jesus again feels Mary's pain just like he did Martha. And it says that his spirit became sad and troubled. And we see that he not only experiences the pain of the people that he loves, but you see he's affected by it in this next part. That Jesus himself expresses pain, not just his own pain, but the pain of those he loves. He enters into pain with us. Notice in verse 35, Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how much he loved him." But some of them said, "He opened the eyes of the blind man. Couldn't he have kept this man from dying?" Once more, Jesus felt very sad. He came to the tomb. It was the cave with a stone in front of the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there's a bad smell. Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days." So commentary on this just real quickly is God's glory is revealed even when circumstances stink. I know I make that kind of a joke, but the reality is in this case, that was Martha's logic is, this isn't going to go well. This is really, it's literally going to physically stink. Lazarus' body is decaying. Martha and Mary are disappointed for Jesus not showing up earlier. The people in the community are doubting Jesus. Couldn't he have saved him, they're saying. Their idea is that death is final. Death is the end. And I want you to understand, too, in the context of this, they're only about 2 miles from Jerusalem, where a bunch of people actually want Jesus dead. So this is a very close proximity. And Jesus shows up in this perceived mess of a situation, but at God's appointed time, and he says this. Then Jesus said, "Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory?" If you believe, you will see God's glory. Notice Jesus highlights this purpose again, God's glory being revealed by believing in him. So they took the stone away in verse 41, it says. They looked up at Jesus. Then Jesus looked up and he said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here. I said it so that they will believe that you have sent me." So Jesus prays in a way that frames for others the truth about himself. He's praying this thing out loud that Jesus already knows and that God already knows for the benefit of the people who are hearing it, because he wants them to believe, because their belief is the thing that will give God glory. God is glorified both in Jesus' prayer, but in the public in the truth that's being publicly revealed here. Jesus also reveals something that's just true, that when we talk to God, he really does hear you. Like, we are a church, a community of people practicing the way of Jesus together. We actually believe that when we talk to God, when we address our thoughts towards him, when we verbally say something to him, he really does hear us. And he does enter into our lives and our space and meets us in that place, regardless of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So the next thing I want you to see also from that passage is that he doesn't pray for Lazarus to be healed or to resurrect. He simply commands it. He says, "Lazarus, come out." So look at verse 43. Then he called in a loud voice. He says, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out. His hands and his feet were wrapped in strips of linen. A cloth was around his face. Jesus said, "Take off the clothes he was buried in and let him go." Let him go. We see in this moment, this impact of this moment is quite shocking. It's truly life-altering, image-shattering. You see doubts shifting, belief being built. It says in verse 25 that many who saw, or 45, many who saw believed. Now that's the story as far as I'm going to cover it today. That's 45 verses. But I want to make some observations that I think are important to help us frame this and think about this and personalize this a bit more. Jesus' late arrival is not incidental or accidental. This is the whole theological engine. This is really why this is so important to grasp, is that Jesus' timing here, his late arrival, has a purpose, and that purpose is fundamentally for God's glory, not for our pleasure or our comfort. Which seems very hard to accept when our lives are usually lived focused on ourselves, and if we're not happy, we're not okay. Or if things don't happen the way that we want, we're unsettled by it. When my package arrives late, I'm bothered by it. When my medication takes too long to work, I'm frustrated by it. And God doesn't seem to be all that concerned about the timing of everything because there's something he wants to do to meet us in that. This delay frames suffering, exposes human expectations, it reveals divine timing, and transforms a hope for healing into an unprecedented and unexpected resurrection. So let's look at a map real quickly because I want to frame the geography of this delay. I want you to see how very close Bethany and Jerusalem are. Jesus is on the other side of the Jordan, hanging out. He just had fled from Jerusalem because they tried to stone him, and he's teaching out there with his disciples. And the journey from the Blue Jesus Square to Bethany is about a day's journey, a full day's journey. The distance between Bethany and Jerusalem is 2 miles. So you can walk that in 40 minutes. So Jesus is going, and he says he's going to Jerusalem, or he says he's going to Judea. He doesn't say he's going to Bethany, but of course he says, let's go see Lazarus. But the reason why is because the region of Judea was a higher concentration of people who were the religious Sanhedrin, the people who wanted Jesus dead. And so he's going into a known threat. And so there's this timing of something that God's going to do to redeem all of humanity, by which he's going at the time that will both resurrect Lazarus, but also be the timing that God appointed for him to go to Jerusalem and experience his own death. There's something bigger at work here that we don't see and couldn't see. But by understanding the geography and the timing, it makes sense in a bigger picture now. Why did Mary and Martha have to wait? Because it wasn't God's time for Jesus to die and resurrect. Because it needed to happen at a different time in order to both fulfill Scripture, but to do the thing that God purposed for it to do. And aren't you glad that he delayed? Even though people, if they were sitting in the circle, if Mary and Martha were here, we'd be weeping with them. And we weep with one another when the things in life and the desires that we want and the healings that we want and the restorations that we want don't happen in time. And we don't understand it, but God's doing something that we don't see. And I want you to find hope there. He stayed for 2 days longer. Tim Keller says, Jesus' love is not lessened by his delay. His delay is an expression of his love. I want to hit a few things about expectations here as far as this delay, this late arrival. Martha says, if you had been here. Mary's expression was very much the same thing. If you would have been here, my brother would not have died. And so often we have these conversations with God when we see our circumstances being so difficult. And Tim Keller says, it's either woe is me or woe is thee. It's either your fault or my fault. What did I do wrong? And we try to bargain with God. Or it's, God, don't you care? Because we can't see what else he's doing. That he's doing something on a cosmic level that we can't understand. And we saw that Jesus was affected with the weight of it. He felt the pain of those that he loved. Both their pain and his own pain, because he loves. And so God meets us in our grief. He meets them in their grief. And Jesus' timing is not, it's just, his timing is not reactive like we want it to be, but it is revealing. Because we know and believe that has done something that needed to be done at the right time, and he's doing something in our lives and in our world that he has a plan for that we don't yet see. Jesus wanted people to know his love and to trust him, for his glory to be revealed in and through their faith. Jesus is not unfeeling or detached from his emotions. We see numerous times in this passage he was deeply moved. He was troubled. There was grief, and the word for Greek in the Hebrew there is this. He was so disturbed that it was agitated almost to and often that word is used even for anger. That's how disturbed internally he was. It was so upsetting that it was physiologically making him, causing pain. A kind of pain that can create anger. Any of you been in that kind of pain before? And Jesus was experiencing that, and God wants us to know that he was present with us. And Jesus himself weeps. He enters into suffering. And then I want you to know that he enters into it, but then he overcomes it by his presence. He entered into the suffering and the pain and the tears and the emotion with Mary and Martha before Lazarus was resurrected, and he does the same with us. His delays are never detached from his compassion. In the time that you and I want for things, he is not saying, I'm just going to make you wait for it. He's saying, no, I'm going to walk you through it. We live in a broken world that wasn't designed to be the way that it was. We experience the brokenness of other people, other choices, broken systems, spiritual battles. And God says, I'm going to be with you in it. Trust me, believe in me. There's a divine timing. It talks about being in the tomb 4 days. That's another way in Jewish mind. For 3 days, Jews had believed that if the body was dead, for 3 days the soul stayed in the body. A fourth day meant it was final. And so it's basically saying death is now irreversible from a human perspective. And Jesus shows up when they thought it was done, and undoes it. When all human hope was exhausted, Jesus shows up and says, trust me when it seems impossible. He commands the stone to be rolled away. And again, this is one of those wild things. He doesn't say, hey guys, is this a good idea? Or hey guys, I want to go in and have a conversation. I want to just go pray over him. He says, remove the stone. He tells them just to do something, which is asking for people to take action and trust him when something makes no sense. I mean, Martha's like, this is really going to stink. And I think that sometimes God's asked us to do things too, based upon faith in him, not on faith of outcome. Doing something that doesn't make sense as far as we can see. And so I think he's inviting us into this. Faith often begins with obedience. As John Ortberg says, faith often begins with obedience that feels irrational. Obedience that feels irrational. I'm doing something that just makes no sense. That's the command. The prayer, he says, I thank you that you've heard from me. Jesus in this moment of grief is now providing gratitude to God. Like, here's this shift that Jesus is pointing to, that I can have hope that God actually hears my prayers in the midst of all of my pain and my grief. Like, there's something that's shifting that Jesus is wanting to shift in people's minds, that looking to God's faithfulness and to his character and to the way he relates to us can shift for us the possibility of what God might actually do when we choose to trust him. And so he says, God, thank you for always hearing me. Because when we believe that God actually hears us, we're actually going to pray things or do things that we think that God's calling us to do. But if we thought it was just a static, rote prayer, well, okay, wishful thinking, here you go. I'm doing my good thing. Maybe you'll like me a little more and you'll do more things that I want next time. Like, no, that's not what's happening. Jesus is saying gratitude in his heart. I can trust you, even in the midst of a situation that is terrible. The miracle is interesting. His prayer was of gratitude, but the miracle was a command of action based upon what Jesus knew about God and what we don't often believe, is that God can do miracles. My son's life is a testimony of actually seeing a literal miracle. Scar tissue in his lung that had been there for 2 years was somehow removed and his symptoms resolved miraculously. Doctors called it spontaneous change. We called it a miracle. Was everything in Brennan's life and history fully resolved? No. He had to have numerous surgeries. There were other things that had to deal with his health issues. But that one thing was. And it came back to, for me, when my son was in pediatric ICU, moved there, Kelly wasn't there, and I'm there by myself. And I have this arguing, yelling, tearful, cursing conversation with God. And I hear him say, Mark, I love your son more than you do. You're going to have to trust me with him. I'm trusting with something that's looking worse. But in that moment, I couldn't deny that that's what I felt like I heard from God. And it wasn't an audible voice. It was just this strong thought in my head that came outside of my own feelings. And I knew it wasn't me. And I had to cling to that thing. And I'm not saying that God's going to give you all the miracles that you want in your life. It didn't. My son has had a health history. And his life is still going on. But I'm just saying, like, God meets us when we actually believe that he's capable of doing something, we choose to trust him. And I think sometimes God is more delighted, am I willing to just trust him, than the outcome that I get from him or that I want from him. I want you to hear this. He's more delighted and glorified in my willingness to trust him than in the outcome that I want or when it happens. Because he's God and he knows what's best. That's what Jesus did. He came at the right time, in the right place, to do what needed to be done. Because there was a greater work that God wanted to do in a resurrection that was not Lazarus. Lazarus is just a sign pointing to the substance of who Jesus is and what he wanted to do. And what he wants to do in your life and mine when we choose to trust him, even when things don't make sense, even when it's hard. I'm going to skip a section, if that's okay, and I just want to move us to a time of just reflecting. There's so many more things that I could say about this passage, but I think I just want to give us a moment just to respond to it, wherever you're at. Whatever you're walking through, whatever seems like is dead or is dying, wherever you feel like there's an area in your life or your whole life that just doesn't make sense, that the timing is off, that there's been a delay. And I just want to give you time to respond. I've got a bunch of questions that I put up there that could speak to you and where you're at. So you just put those questions up there. I'm just going to let them sit there, and I'm just going to ask Cameron and the worship team to come up and just give us some time to just sit with us and have a conversation with the Father. And then I'll come back up and I want to pray for us before we enter into communion. So would you sit with us just for a moment and just have a conversation with the Father? Where does he want to meet with you in the midst of this?